Openly South African gay Imam Muhsin Hendricks, shot dead, an analysis of the implications and broader context. Welcome to the Bold African Voice, BAV. I'm Abdul Karim Kargbo, born and raised in Africa. In today's video, we discuss the tragic and shocking murder of South African Imam Muhsin Hendricks, who made history as the first openly gay imam. His untimely death has left the LGBTQI+ and Muslim communities in shock, and we dive deep into the implications of this crime, examining LGBTQI+ rights in South Africa and the broader African context. Stay tuned as we analyze what must change to protect marginalized communities across the continent. The tragic death of Muhsin Hendricks. Muhsin Hendricks, recognized as the world's first openly gay imam, was tragically shot dead in South Africa's southern city of Gqeberha on Saturday, February 15, 2025. Hendricks, 58, had dedicated much of his life to creating safe spaces for LGBTQI+ Muslims, challenging both societal and religious norms. His death, as reported by South African police, occurred in an ambush when two suspects, whose faces were covered, opened fire on the car Hendricks was traveling in, killing him instantly. The details of the incident are still unfolding, and while police have yet to confirm the motive, many within the LGBTQI+ community suspect this may have been a hate crime. Justice Deputy Minister Andries Nel mentioned that law enforcement was hot on the heels of the suspects, signaling that authorities are treating this as a serious case. Hendricks' legacy, however, raises broader questions about LGBTQI+ rights, religious tolerance, and the intersection of identity in contemporary South Africa and beyond. The life and impact of Muhsin Hendricks. Hendricks made history when he came out as gay in 1996, becoming a prominent figure in both the Muslim and LGBTQI+ communities. He founded the Inner Circle, an organization that offered a support network for queer Muslims reconciling their faith with their sexuality. Hendricks later established Gqeberha, a mosque in Wynberg, Cape Town, which became a haven for marginalized individuals, particularly queer Muslims and women, offering them a space to practice Islam freely. This mosque, his life's work, was more than a physical structure. It was an embodiment of Hendricks' belief that faith and sexuality could coexist. For many Muslims grappling with the rejection of their sexuality by conservative elements within their community, Hendricks represented a voice of hope and defiance. However, Hendricks' stance was not without controversy. His views on sexuality and Islam led to sharp criticism from conservative Muslim groups. The Muslim Judicial Council, MJC, condemned his death, reiterating its stance against his views on LGBTQI+ rights, while still denouncing the violence against him. This dissonance reflects a deep division within the Muslim community, not just in South Africa, but across many parts of the world, over the acceptance of LGBTQI+ individuals. The growing threat of hate crimes against LGBTQI+ individuals. Hendricks' death is a stark reminder of the ongoing violence that LGBTQI+ individuals, particularly those who challenge religious and cultural boundaries, face in many parts of the world. According to the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex Association, ILGA, Hendricks' murder is suspected to be a hate crime, underlining the vulnerability of LGBTQI+ communities to violence. Julia Ehrt, ILGA's executive director, has called for a thorough investigation into the incident, emphasizing the need for justice in the wake of such violence. South Africa, while progressive in many respects, remains a country where homophobia and transphobia are deeply entrenched. Despite the legalization of same-sex marriage in 2006, societal attitudes toward LGBTQI+ individuals remain complex, with many facing violence, discrimination, and exclusion from both the public and religious spheres. The murder of Hendricks is yet another tragedy that underscores the pressing need to address hate crimes and violence within the country. The global context, religious tensions, and LGBTQI+ rights. The killing of Hendricks is not an isolated incident, but part of a broader global pattern where LGBTQI+ individuals who challenge religious and cultural norms often face violent retribution. This trend is particularly pronounced in countries with conservative religious majorities, where LGBTQI+ identities are often seen as a direct affront to traditional values. Across Africa, LGBTQI+ rights remain a contentious issue. In Uganda, for example, the passing of the Anti-Homosexuality Act in 2023 sparked outrage, with some religious leaders and political figures advocating for harsh punishments for LGBTQI+ individuals. Similarly, in countries like Nigeria and Tanzania, LGBTQI+ people face societal persecution, criminalization, and violence. Hendricks's case stands as a juxtaposition to these struggles, showing how, even in relatively progressive South Africa, the fight for LGBTQI+ rights is still far from over. This tension between religious beliefs and LGBTQI+ rights is particularly prominent within Islam, where many clerics assert that same-sex relationships are contrary to Islamic teachings. The story of Hendricks highlights how LGBTQI+ Muslims often find themselves marginalized not only by society, but also by religious communities that are expected to offer sanctuary. Hendricks' mission to reconcile his faith with his sexuality was an act of profound bravery, but it also exposed him to significant threats from those unwilling to accept change within religious traditions. The broader implications for South Africa and the world Hendricks' death raises important questions about the future of LGBTQI+ rights in South Africa and the world. As one of the few African nations that has made strides in LGBTQI+ legal recognition, South Africa must confront the enduring violence and discrimination against this community. The murder has sparked a public debate about the effectiveness of legal protections for LGBTQI+ individuals and the growing influence of conservative ideologies that seek to undermine these rights. On a global scale, Hendricks' death serves as a wake-up call for both human rights activists and policymakers. The world must acknowledge that LGBTQI+ rights, particularly the rights of those challenging religious and cultural norms, remain under siege. In many parts of the world, LGBTQI+ individuals live in fear, and advocacy for their rights often comes at a high personal cost. As the investigation into Hendricks' death continues, it is critical that South African authorities pursue justice with the same urgency and determination that they have shown in other high-profile cases of violence. The role of the South African Human Rights Commission, SAHRC, will also be pivotal in ensuring that this tragedy does not fade into the background but remains a focal point for much-needed reform in the treatment of LGBTQI+ individuals. A forward-looking approach, what needs to be done for South Africa, and indeed the entire African continent, Hendricks' death highlights the need for an ongoing robust conversation about LGBTQI+ rights, religious freedom, and the intersectionality of both. It is crucial that governments, religious leaders, and human rights organizations work together to create more inclusive spaces where people of all sexual orientations and gender identities can live without fear of violence and discrimination. Additionally, the LGBTQI+ community in Africa requires stronger protection, not just through laws, but in the form of community engagement and awareness building. South Africa, as a leader in this area, must continue to push the boundaries of equality, ensuring that LGBTQI+ individuals are not merely tolerated, but embraced as integral members of society. While the investigation into Hendricks' death is still ongoing, it serves as a pivotal moment for reflection on the state of LGBTQI+ rights and the cultural and religious tensions that persist in Africa. Moving forward, it is imperative that both legal frameworks and social attitudes evolve to ensure that tragedies like Hendricks' murder are not repeated. The fight for LGBTQI+ rights is far from over, and it is up to every individual and institution to work toward a more inclusive, tolerant world. In the coming weeks and months, the world will be watching closely to see how South Africa handles this investigation. Will the authorities bring the perpetrators to justice? Will the LGBTQI plus community in South Africa and beyond feel a greater sense of security? These questions remain unanswered, but Hendricks's legacy, one of courage, compassion, and defiance, will continue to inspire the fight for equality and human dignity across the globe. The role of religious institutions in addressing LGBTQI plus rights. The role of religious institutions in the ongoing struggle for LGBTQI plus rights is a central aspect of this conversation, particularly within the Muslim community. South Africa, being a predominantly Christian country with a significant Muslim minority, faces unique challenges in bridging the divide between religious teachings and LGBTQI plus rights. Hendricks Mosque, Masjidul Gqeberha, was a progressive attempt to reconcile Islam with the reality of LGBTQI plus identities, but the widespread rejection of his views by Islamic scholars and institutions indicates the formidable resistance faced by LGBTQI plus Muslims in this space. The Muslim Judicial Council's condemnation of Hendricks's views, while distancing itself from his death, reflects a broader tendency within many religious organizations across Africa to prioritize traditional beliefs over human rights. This creates a hostile environment where LGBTQI plus individuals are either ostracized or forced to live in secrecy, fearing persecution from both religious and secular authorities. As a result, the marginalization of LGBTQI plus Muslims is compounded by the very institutions that should offer support, fostering a culture of fear and denial that undermines the efforts to promote equality. Religious institutions must engage in deeper self-reflection and dialogue about how to better serve LGBTQI plus individuals within their communities. This requires not only reinterpreting sacred texts to accommodate evolving understandings of gender and sexuality, but also fostering environments where acceptance and compassion replace condemnation. The challenge lies in balancing tradition with the evolving values of human rights and dignity, a struggle that is not unique to Islam but resonates within other religious communities across Africa as well. In response to Hendricks's murder, there is a growing call for Muslim religious leaders, particularly in South Africa, to take a more progressive stance on LGBTQI plus inclusion. This would be an important step toward ensuring that LGBTQI plus Muslims are not forced into silence or persecution, but can live openly and authentically in their faith communities. However, this is a long-term goal that will require significant shifts in theology and public policy, a process that could take years, if not decades, to fully realize. The political and legal landscape. South Africa's role as a model. South Africa has long been heralded as a progressive leader in LGBTQI plus rights on the African continent, particularly with the landmark 2006 legalization of same-sex marriage. The country's constitution, widely regarded as one of the most progressive in the world, enshrines the right to equality and prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation. However, the murder of Muhsin Hendricks highlights the persistent gap between legal protection and societal attitudes, showing that legal progress alone is insufficient to address the deep-seated homophobia that still exists in many parts of society. The South African government, led by the African National Congress, ANC, has made strides in promoting LGBTQI plus rights. However, the murder of Hendricks and the challenges faced by LGBTQI plus individuals suggest that there is still much work to be done. A key issue lies in the enforcement of anti-discrimination laws and the protection of LGBTQI plus individuals from violence and hate crimes. South Africa must take proactive measures to strengthen these protections, ensuring that LGBTQI plus individuals can live without fear of retribution. The case of Hendricks should serve as a rallying point for South African lawmakers to implement stricter laws and policies that criminalize hate crimes against LGBTQI plus individuals. Additionally, the government must provide better support for LGBTQI plus communities through education, awareness campaigns, and increased access to legal resources. South Africa has the potential to continue leading the way in Africa, but it must be vigilant in safeguarding the rights of marginalized groups, especially LGBTQI plus Muslims, who often face compounded challenges due to their intersecting identities. Beyond South Africa, The broader African continent presents a more complex and difficult landscape for LGBTQI rights. In many African countries, homosexuality remains criminalized, and LGBTQI individuals are subjected to violence, imprisonment, and social ostracism. Countries like Uganda, Nigeria, and Tanzania have passed laws that further criminalize same-sex relationships, exacerbating the vulnerability of LGBTQI individuals. This legal persecution, coupled with societal stigma, places LGBTQI people at constant risk. Despite these challenges, South Africa's example continues to offer hope. The country has proven that it is possible to create a legal framework that protects LGBTQI rights while navigating the challenges of a diverse and religiously complex society. However, for South Africa's progress to have a meaningful impact on the continent, other African nations must also be encouraged to adopt similar legal protections. This requires both domestic political will and international pressure to combat the rising tide of anti-LGBTQI sentiment across Africa. The role of international advocacy. The international community, including organizations such as the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex Association, ILGA, has a crucial role to play in supporting LGBTQI rights in Africa. The shock and outrage expressed by ILGA following Hendricks's death highlight the global commitment to human rights and the urgent need to address the challenges faced by LGBTQI individuals worldwide. International advocacy groups must continue to exert pressure on African governments to honor their human rights commitments and adopt stronger protections for LGBTQI individuals. In addition to legal advocacy, these organizations can also provide support for local activists and community leaders who are working to change societal attitudes toward LGBTQI people. By amplifying the voices of those on the front lines of the struggle for LGBTQI equality, the international community can help build a global network of solidarity that challenges hate and discrimination. In South Africa, the role of LGBTQI organizations, such as the South African Human Rights Commission, SAHRC, will also be critical in ensuring that justice is served in the wake of Hendricks's murder. These organizations can help to hold the police and legal authorities accountable for ensuring a thorough investigation and ensuring that the full truth of the crime is uncovered. A call for solidarity and change. The murder of Muhsin Hendricks has sent shockwaves through both the LGBTQI and Muslim communities, particularly in South Africa. It serves as a grim reminder of the vulnerability of LGBTQI individuals, especially those who challenge religious and cultural norms. As the investigation into his death continues, the need for broader societal change remains urgent. For South Africa to truly fulfill its promise as a leader in human rights, the country must continue to strengthen the legal and societal protections for LGBTQI individuals, while addressing the ongoing issue of homophobia and transphobia within religious and cultural institutions. The death of Hendricks is a tragic loss, but it also presents an opportunity for reflection and action. It is time for South Africa and the world to take a hard look at the state of LGBTQI rights and work towards a future where no one, regardless of their sexuality or faith, must live in fear. As we await justice for Muhsin Hendricks, the global community must continue to fight for equality, respect, and dignity for all LGBTQI individuals and ensure that the tragic loss of Hendricks becomes a catalyst for positive change across the world. His legacy, founded on courage and authenticity, must live on in the work of those who continue to push for a more inclusive and just society. The broader African LGBTQI struggle. Lessons from Muhsin Hendricks' murder. The murder of Muhsin Hendricks sends a loud and clear message about the continuing challenges faced by LGBTQI individuals in Africa. While South Africa has made significant strides in LGBTQI rights, it remains an exception on a continent where, in many countries, homosexuality is still criminalized, and LGBTQI individuals are often subjected to persecution, violence, and social exclusion. In countries like Uganda, Kenya, and Zambia, the legal and social barriers for LGBTQI plus people are formidable. However, the enduring fight for LGBTQI plus rights across Africa is not without its victories. Despite the harsh realities, there are growing movements for change. South Africa's progress, particularly in the areas of legal protections, same-sex marriage, and anti-discrimination laws, is an important model for other African countries to look to. Yet, Hendricks' murder also illustrates that progress in the legal and political spheres does not always translate into social acceptance. South Africa's progress in LGBTQI+ rights has been marred by incidents of violence, such as the brutal killing of Hendricks, showing the deep-rooted prejudice that still exists even in the most liberal of societies. It is also crucial to recognize the intersectionality of the struggle for LGBTQI+ rights in Africa. For many African LGBTQI+ people, their identity is shaped not just by their sexuality, but by their cultural, ethnic, and religious affiliations. Hendricks' identity as both a gay man and a Muslim imam adds another layer of complexity to his life and work. His murder is a stark reminder that the fight for LGBTQI+ rights cannot be isolated from the broader struggles against religious intolerance, ethnic discrimination, and social exclusion. These intersections make the fight for LGBTQI+ rights even more challenging in African societies, where conservatism often holds sway over progressive values. Despite these challenges, there is growing support from grassroots organizations that aim to empower LGBTQI+ individuals in Africa. Local activists are building networks, raising awareness, and offering safe spaces, much like Hendricks did with the Inner Circle and Gqeberha. These efforts are crucial in shifting public perceptions and fostering solidarity among marginalized communities. Yet the continued violence against LGBTQI+ individuals highlights the urgent need for systemic change. Governments, religious institutions, and civil society must engage in a collective effort to protect and uplift LGBTQI+ voices. The role of media and social platforms in raising awareness. The role of media, both traditional and digital, is also integral to the conversation about LGBTQI+ rights. As the global outcry over Hendricks' death spreads, media coverage becomes a powerful tool in raising awareness about the struggles faced by LGBTQI+ individuals in Africa. Social media platforms have been instrumental in amplifying the voices of activists and in providing spaces where LGBTQI+ people can share their stories, experiences, and challenges. Hendricks' death has ignited conversations on social media, with many using platforms like Twitter and Instagram to express solidarity with the LGBTQI+ community and call for justice. This digital activism has become a critical force in the global LGBTQI+ rights movement, and the attention garnered by Hendricks' murder illustrates the ability of online communities to influence real-world outcomes. Social media can play a significant role in mobilizing public support, raising awareness about the issues facing LGBTQI+ individuals, and putting pressure on governments and organizations to act. However, the use of social media for advocacy also brings challenges. In many African countries, social media platforms are subject to state control, with governments monitoring and censoring content that challenges prevailing political or social norms. In some instances, LGBTQI+ activists have been targeted online, subjected to cyberbullying, doxing, and threats of violence. As such, social media is both a powerful tool and a vulnerable space for advocacy, requiring careful management to ensure the safety of activists and the continuation of their work. Despite these risks, the growing digital presence of LGBTQI+ advocates across Africa is undeniable. Platforms like Twitter and Facebook provide a space for solidarity, education, and resistance, allowing activists to build momentum for policy reforms and social change. As Hendricks' murder has shown, global attention can help shine a spotlight on these issues, sparking wider conversations about human rights, religious tolerance, and social justice. Lessons from the global LGBTQI+ movement. International solidarity and support. International solidarity has played a key role in advancing the rights of LGBTQI+ individuals worldwide. The murder of Hendricks and the subsequent calls for justice from the global LGBTQI+ community highlight the importance of cross-border support in the fight for equality. Global LGBTQI+ advocacy organizations such as ILGA and Amnesty International have long been at the forefront of pushing for legal reforms and greater protections for sexual minorities. Their ongoing work has had a profound impact in some countries, where international pressure has led to the decriminalization of homosexuality or the establishment of anti-discrimination laws. In Hendricks' case, the outpouring of grief and solidarity from the international community has underscored the importance of maintaining a global perspective on LGBTQI+ rights. The ability to draw attention to such incidents on a global stage not only holds governments accountable, but also creates a broader platform for the voices of local activists and marginalized communities. However, while international pressure can have a significant impact, it is important that global LGBTQI+ movements continue to center the voices of local activists who are on the ground and in the struggle every day. External support is invaluable, but it must be accompanied by deep and sustained engagement with local LGBTQI+ communities. This ensures that any efforts for change are grounded in the needs and desires of those most affected by discrimination. Moreover, international solidarity must also encompass support for LGBTQI+ refugees and asylum seekers, many of whom flee violence and persecution in their home countries. Asylum seekers, particularly from countries with harsh anti-LGBTQI+ laws, face unique challenges when seeking refuge in more progressive nations. Advocacy for the rights and safety of LGBTQI+ refugees is a critical component of the global LGBTQI+ movement, one that highlights the intersectionality of human rights struggles and the importance of international cooperation. The future of LGBTQI+ rights in Africa. What's next? Looking ahead, the future of LGBTQI+ rights in Africa remains uncertain, but there are reasons for cautious optimism. The legacy of individuals like Muhsin Hendricks, who lived and died for the cause of LGBTQI+ equality, cannot be forgotten. His story serves as both a tragic reminder of the challenges ahead and a beacon of hope for those who continue to fight for change. As governments, religious institutions, and civil society continue to engage in the fight for human rights, it is crucial that the lessons learned from Hendricks' life and death shape the future of LGBTQI+ rights in Africa. South Africa, as one of the continent's most progressive countries in terms of LGBTQI+ rights, remains a key player in this movement. The country's progress offers valuable insights for other African nations that are still grappling with how to balance cultural, religious, and legal considerations with the human rights of LGBTQI+ individuals. South Africa must continue to be a leader in LGBTQI+ rights, using its influence to inspire and encourage neighboring countries to adopt more inclusive policies. At the same time, the continued engagement of LGBTQI+ activists, both local and international, will be essential in pushing for systemic change across the continent. These activists must work in tandem with governments, religious leaders, and other stakeholders to create a society where LGBTQI+ individuals are accepted, protected, and celebrated for who they are. The fight for LGBTQI+ rights is far from over, and the tragic loss of Muhsin Hendricks will continue to fuel this important struggle. His memory will live on as a symbol of resilience and courage in the face of hate and discrimination. As the global community reflects on this loss, it is essential to keep pushing for progress, unity, and justice, until the day when no LGBTQI+ individual anywhere in the world must live in fear. The role of education and advocacy in changing attitudes toward LGBTQI+ rights. One of the most critical elements in the fight for LGBTQI+ rights, particularly in Africa, is education. For lasting change to occur, attitudes toward LGBTQI+ individuals must be transformed, and this can only happen through sustained efforts in both formal education and grassroots awareness campaigns. In many African countries, where homosexuality is either criminalized or considered taboo, most of the population lacks a comprehensive understanding of LGBTQI+ issues. Misinformation, religious dogma, and societal norms perpetuate a culture of fear and discrimination against sexual minorities. This lack of awareness often leads to harmful stereotypes and prejudices that create a hostile environment for LGBTQI+ individuals. Education plays a pivotal role in dispelling these myths and fostering greater understanding and empathy. Schools, universities, and community organizations have a responsibility to teach about diversity, inclusion, and human rights. In many African countries, LGBTQI+ issues are not addressed in educational curricula, and in some cases, teachers and students are actively discouraged from discussing these topics. To combat this, advocacy groups and human rights organizations are working to create educational programs that focus on LGBTQI+ rights and provide accurate, non-biased information. Hendricks himself was an advocate for dialogue and understanding. His role as an openly gay imam within the Muslim community was not just about creating a physical space for LGBTQI+ Muslims, but about challenging the hearts and minds of people through discourse. This is particularly important when it comes to religious groups, where there is often resistance to recognizing LGBTQI+ rights due to deeply held beliefs. Hendricks's life and work demonstrate the power of conversations and education in changing entrenched attitudes. The global community, including international NGOs and educational institutions, must provide resources and support to African countries in their efforts to educate about LGBTQI+ issues. Global solidarity can help create platforms for dialogue, where African countries can share experiences and best practices, ultimately leading to a more inclusive future for all. The ability to share lived experiences and humanize LGBTQI+ people can lead to transformative shifts in societal attitudes, which is essential for reducing violence and discrimination. The importance of legal reform and international pressure. While education and advocacy are critical in changing public attitudes, legal reform remains essential in ensuring long-term protection for LGBTQI+ individuals. In Africa, where many countries have laws that criminalize same-sex relationships and behaviors, LGBTQI+ individuals are often denied basic human rights, including the right to love whom they choose, the right to marry, and the right to live without fear of persecution. South Africa, despite its legal progress, remains an outlier in the African context. The rest of the continent has been slow to follow in South Africa's footsteps, and in some countries, the situation is becoming worse. In Uganda, for example, the passing of the Anti-Homosexuality Act in 2023 resulted in harsher punishments for LGBTQI+ people, including life imprisonment for those found guilty of engaging in same-sex acts. Similarly, in countries like Nigeria and Tanzania, LGBTQI+ individuals face widespread discrimination and legal persecution. The stark contrast between South Africa's progressive stance and the regressive law in other African countries is a reminder of the challenges that lie ahead. International pressure and diplomatic efforts are crucial in pushing for legal reform in these countries. Foreign governments, international human rights organizations, and the United Nations must continue to apply pressure on African governments that criminalize homosexuality to reform their laws and uphold international human rights standards. As Hendricks's death illustrates, the failure to provide legal protections leaves LGBTQI+ individuals vulnerable to violence and discrimination. Additionally, international human rights bodies must continue their work to ensure that LGBTQI+ individuals are not just protected by the law, but are also given access to justice when their rights are violated. Legal reform should be accompanied by stronger enforcement mechanisms to ensure that those who commit violence against LGBTQI+ people are held accountable. Countries that have ratified international human rights treaties, such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, have an obligation to uphold the rights of LGBTQI people and create an environment where they are free from violence, discrimination, and persecution. Looking toward the future, the role of African LGBTQI activists. As the struggle for LGBTQI rights continues, African activists will remain at the forefront of the movement. They are the ones who, despite facing constant threats, continue to advocate for change, challenge societal norms, and provide support for those marginalized by both society and the law. These activists are not only fighting for the rights of LGBTQI individuals, but are also challenging traditional beliefs and systems that contribute to social exclusion. The legacy of Muhsin Hendricks will live on through the work of countless African LGBTQI activists who continue his mission of creating spaces where people of all sexual orientations and gender identities can live authentically and without fear. As South Africa's first openly gay imam, Hendricks set a powerful example of what it means to live truthfully, even in the face of danger. His work has laid the groundwork for future generations of LGBTQI Muslims and marginalized individuals to build upon. In the coming years, we can expect to see more visibility and advocacy around LGBTQI issues in Africa, despite the challenges. As the global LGBTQI rights movement grows stronger, so too will the resolve of African activists, who are increasingly using technology, social media, and international partnerships to amplify their voices and demand change. But to truly achieve equality, LGBTQI activists in Africa will need more than just visibility. They need legal protection, social acceptance, and a commitment from governments and religious institutions to defend their human rights. Governments must recognize that LGBTQI individuals are not a threat to society or religion, but a part of the rich diversity that makes up the fabric of African societies. The death of Muhsin Hendricks serves as a poignant reminder of the progress that still needs to be made and the lives that are at stake. However, it also serves as a call to action to continue fighting for the dignity, rights, and safety of LGBTQI individuals across Africa. By building on the foundation laid by Hendricks and other brave advocates, the next generation of LGBTQI activists in Africa can continue to challenge oppression and create a society where all people, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, can live without fear. The global fight for LGBTQI rights, solidarity across borders. As the world grapples with the complex and often difficult conversations surrounding LGBTQI rights, it is essential to understand that this is a global fight. The murder of Muhsin Hendricks is not just an African issue or a South African issue. It is a global issue. LGBTQI people everywhere deserve the right to live authentically, without fear of violence, discrimination, or social ostracism. International solidarity will continue to play a crucial role in the fight for LGBTQI rights. It is not just the responsibility of local activists, but also the global community to ensure that the rights of sexual minorities are upheld. This includes continued pressure on governments to reform laws, stronger action from international bodies to prevent discrimination and violence, and the support of allies in the fight for LGBTQI equality. In addition, the global community must recognize the importance of cultural sensitivity in LGBTQI advocacy. While it is important to challenge oppressive laws and practices, it is equally important to listen to the voices of local communities and to build campaigns that resonate with their cultural and religious values. By incorporating local perspectives and working alongside grassroots organizations, the global movement can ensure that LGBTQI advocacy is both effective and culturally appropriate. As the world continues to evolve and progress, so too must the fight for LGBTQI rights. The legacy of Muhsin Hendricks, along with the efforts of countless other activists, must inspire the global community to persist in its efforts to create a more just and equal world for LGBTQI people everywhere. The fight for LGBTQI rights is far from over, but with unity, resilience, and continued solidarity, change is possible. The intersection of LGBTQI plus rights and religious freedom, a delicate balance. A key issue that must be addressed in the struggle for LGBTQI plus rights in Africa and around the world is the intersection between LGBTQI plus advocacy and religious freedom. For many LGBTQI plus individuals, their sexual orientation or gender identity is often at odds with their religious beliefs or the teachings of their religious communities. In the case of Muhsin Hendricks, his position as a gay imam highlighted the complex relationship between faith and identity. His life demonstrated that religious faith and sexual orientation do not have to be mutually exclusive, but for many, reconciling these two aspects of their identity remains a challenge. Religious institutions, especially in conservative societies, often play a pivotal role in shaping attitudes towards LGBTQI plus individuals. In many African countries, traditional religious beliefs hold significant influence over social and political policies. As such, LGBTQI plus people frequently encounter rejection from religious communities that view same-sex relationships as incompatible with religious teachings. This tension, compounded by societal prejudices, leaves many LGBTQI plus individuals in a precarious position, particularly when they seek acceptance from their faith communities. For Hendricks, his commitment to reconciling Islam with his identity as a gay man placed him at odds with many conservative Muslim leaders. While his work provided an inclusive space for queer Muslims to practice Islam, it also exposed him to violent threats and public condemnation. This dynamic is not unique to Islam, but is present in many other faiths across Africa, including Christianity and indigenous religions. Many LGBTQI plus individuals find themselves forced to make painful decisions to hide their sexual identity to maintain religious belonging, or to leave their faith altogether in pursuit of acceptance. The global LGBTQI plus rights movement must navigate this delicate balance between advocating for equality while respecting religious beliefs. While it is essential to protect the rights of LGBTQI plus individuals, it is equally important to foster dialogue between religious and LGBTQI plus communities. Many religious leaders, including those from Christian, Muslim, and other faiths, are beginning to engage in conversations about LGBTQI plus inclusion, and some have advocated for acceptance and tolerance within their communities. Hendricks's life was emblematic of this struggle. While he faced fierce opposition from conservative religious leaders, his commitment to faith and his sexual identity was a model of coexistence for those who seek harmony between their religion and sexual orientation. In the context of Africa, where religion and traditional beliefs hold immense sway, the role of religious institutions in fostering acceptance or resistance to LGBTQI plus rights will be pivotal. Religious leaders who advocate for inclusion and tolerance can play a transformative role in shifting public attitudes and helping to bridge the divide between LGBTQI plus and religious communities. However, this will require significant theological re-examination and an openness to new interpretations of religious texts. The battle for LGBTQI plus rights must not only focus on legal reform, but also on religious reform, reinterpreting religious teachings in ways that embrace diversity and human dignity. The role of international organizations in supporting African LGBTQI plus activism. As the struggle for LGBTQI plus rights continues in Africa, the support of international organizations remains crucial. Human rights organizations such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and the United Nations have been instrumental in advocating for the rights of LGBTQI plus individuals across the continent. These organizations play a pivotal role in monitoring human rights violations, providing legal support, and exerting international pressure on governments to uphold the rights of sexual minorities. The murder of Muhsin Hendricks has drawn international attention to the plight of LGBTQI plus individuals in South Africa and the broader African continent. Organizations such as ILGA and Outright Action International have called for a thorough investigation into Hendricks' death and for the South African authorities to take a firm stand against LGBTQI plus violence. International solidarity in the form of global petitions, statements of support and public awareness campaigns can provide much-needed visibility for the issues faced by LGBTQI+ communities. In addition to public advocacy, international organizations provide vital resources for local LGBTQI+ activists. Many African countries lack the infrastructure or funding to support LGBTQI+ advocacy, and international NGOs can fill this gap by offering financial aid, legal assistance, and educational programs. These organizations help local activists build capacity, protect their rights, and ensure that their voices are heard. Without the support of international organizations, many LGBTQI+ activists in Africa would face even greater risks and challenges in their efforts to promote equality and justice. Moreover, international organizations can help create safe spaces for LGBTQI+ individuals who face violence, persecution, or threats to their lives. Refugees and asylum seekers who flee homophobic violence often find sanctuary in countries with more robust legal protections, and international human rights organizations can provide them with the support they need to rebuild their lives. The global response to Hendricks' murder serves as a reminder of the importance of providing protection and support for those who are forced to flee violence based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. Regional cooperation and advocacy for LGBTQI+ rights. While South Africa has led the way in terms of LGBTQI+ rights, it is critical to recognize that the struggle for equality cannot be confined to one country or region. African activists are increasingly coming together across borders to share strategies, resources, and support in the fight for LGBTQI+ rights. Regional cooperation is key to advancing the cause of equality and combating the widespread violence and discrimination faced by LGBTQI+ individuals in many African nations. One example of regional cooperation is the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which in recent years has taken steps toward addressing human rights violations against LGBTQI+ individuals. Although the Commission has faced significant opposition from member states, particularly those with laws criminalizing same-sex relationships, it remains an important platform for raising awareness about LGBTQI+ rights on the continent. Activists across Africa have called for greater support from the Commission in holding governments accountable for violations of LGBTQI+ rights, and for ensuring that African countries adhere to international human rights standards. Regional organizations and coalitions, such as the African LGBTQI+ Network and the Coalition of African Lesbians, play an essential role in fostering solidarity among LGBTQI+ groups across the continent. By working together, these organizations can amplify their voices and challenge discriminatory laws and practices at the regional level. The success of regional cooperation will depend on the ability to build alliances with governments, civil society organizations, and religious leaders who are willing to engage in dialogue and push for change. Additionally, the African Union, AU, has the potential to be a significant player in advancing LGBTQI+ rights across the continent. While the AU has traditionally remained silent on LGBTQI+ issues, there is growing pressure from human rights groups to address the human rights of sexual minorities. By adopting stronger positions on LGBTQI+ rights, the AU could help push African governments to act and recognize the importance of inclusivity and human dignity. The path forward, moving from condemnation to action. The tragic death of Muhsin Hendricks underscores the urgent need for action on LGBTQI+ rights in Africa. While the global outpouring of grief and solidarity following his murder has been important, it is time to move from condemnation to concrete action. Governments, religious institutions, civil society organizations, and international bodies must work together to create a future where LGBTQI+ individuals are not only tolerated, but celebrated for their diversity and humanity. As we continue to mourn the loss of Hendricks, we must also draw strength from his legacy and the work of countless other activists who have dedicated their lives to the struggle for equality. Their bravery and resilience will continue to inspire future generations to push for change, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. The path forward is challenging, but it is not insurmountable. With continued advocacy, education, legal reform, and regional cooperation, we can work towards a future where LGBTQI+ individuals can live freely and without fear of violence or discrimination. The legacy of Muhsin Hendricks, along with the collective efforts of LGBTQI+ activists across Africa and around the world, will ensure that the fight for equality continues. His life, cut short by violence, will serve as a powerful reminder of the importance of standing up for justice, dignity, and love for all. A call for global accountability and local action. The murder of Muhsin Hendricks should not only spark outrage within the LGBTQI+ community, but also serve as a clarion call to governments, organizations, and individuals across the world to hold accountable those responsible for violence and hate crimes against sexual minorities. It is crucial that global governments, international organizations, and non-governmental organizations take decisive action to ensure that crimes like Hendricks's are met with justice and that the rights of LGBTQI+ individuals are upheld with urgency and commitment. Local action, driven by grassroots movements, will also play a pivotal role in dismantling the systemic barriers that continue to perpetuate homophobia and transphobia in many parts of Africa. It is essential that activists within African countries continue their work, despite the very real threats they face, by fostering solidarity and raising awareness about the issues affecting LGBTQI+ people. Support for local activists is more critical than ever, as they face both societal and legal challenges that many international allies may not fully understand. Grassroots movements, led by those with lived experience, have the power to make change at the local level. Whether through campaigns for legal reforms, community education, or providing safe spaces, these efforts are critical in breaking down the barriers that isolate LGBTQI+ individuals from society. It is important that these movements are not just recognized, but also supported by national and international entities who can help amplify their work. Moreover, local activism must intersect with global efforts, where the experiences of African LGBTQI+ individuals inform broader global strategies. By centering African voices in global discussions on LGBTQI+ rights, a more nuanced and culturally sensitive approach can be developed, ensuring that international support does not disregard local dynamics and challenges. This inclusivity strengthens the global LGBTQI+ movement by empowering the voices of those directly impacted by violence and discrimination. The role of African governments, political will and protection for LGBTQI+ citizens. The role of African governments in the fight for LGBTQI+ rights cannot be overstated. While global pressure and activism are essential, the true change must come from within the political systems of African nations. Governments must recognize the fundamental rights of LGBTQI+ individuals and take concrete actions to ensure their protection. In the aftermath of Hendricks' murder, it is important that South African authorities demonstrate a strong commitment to LGBTQI+ equality by ensuring that justice is served. But this must also be a broader call to action for all African governments to uphold their international human rights obligations. South Africa, as a leading example on the continent, has a responsibility to continue advocating for the rights of LGBTQI+ citizens, while also addressing the ongoing violence faced by this community. The murder of Hendricks cannot simply be viewed as an isolated event, but as part of a larger, pervasive pattern of violence against LGBTQI+ individuals. Additionally, governments across Africa must work to change discriminatory laws that criminalize same-sex relationships and promote social exclusion. This legal framework, where homosexuality is still criminalized in dozens of African countries, creates a climate of fear and hate. Many LGBTQI+ individuals are forced to live in secrecy, concealing their identities to protect themselves from arrest, violence, and even death. Several African countries, such as Botswana, Mozambique, and South Africa, have already decriminalized homosexuality. These countries provide important lessons on how legal changes can create more inclusive societies. In particular, South Africa's constitutional commitment to equality and its protection of LGBTQI+ rights has positioned it as a beacon of hope for those fighting for similar freedoms elsewhere in Africa. However, it is crucial that these legal changes are not simply symbolic, but are enforced and upheld in practice. Governments must also tackle corruption and the inefficiency of law enforcement agencies, which often fail to investigate and prosecute crimes against LGBTQI+ individuals. In many cases, police forces in African countries lack adequate training in dealing with hate crimes or are complicit in discriminatory practices. These institutional failures make it harder for LGBTQI+ individuals to seek justice when their rights are violated. Strengthening the capacity of law enforcement and judicial systems to handle cases of homophobia and transphobia with impartiality and fairness is a critical step toward ensuring the safety of LGBTQI+ citizens. In countries where homosexuality remains criminalized, governments must look to the example set by international human rights bodies and work toward the decriminalization of LGBTQI+ identities. The global human rights community has long called for the repeal of laws that criminalize homosexuality, and these calls should continue to intensify. African leaders must understand that legal discrimination is a violation of human rights and contributes to violence and marginalization of LGBTQI+ people. The power of solidarity, international allies, and their role. The murder of Muhsin Hendricks serves as a sobering reminder of the need for continued global solidarity in the fight for LGBTQI+ rights. The international community, through governments, human rights organizations, and grassroots advocates, must stand united in opposing hate crimes and violence against sexual minorities, especially in regions where these issues are most pronounced. The global response to Hendricks' murder illustrates the strength of international solidarity in bringing attention to LGBTQI+ rights violations. The International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans and Intersex Association (ILGA), Amnesty International, and other international bodies have all voiced their condemnation of the violence against Hendricks and called for justice. This global outpouring of support shows the power of collective action, where the experiences of LGBTQI+ individuals can resonate across borders and spark widespread change. However, while the international response has been crucial, it is equally important that allies focus on providing practical support to local LGBTQI+ movements in Africa. Financial resources, training programs for activists, and the sharing of successful advocacy strategies can help empower local LGBTQI+ groups to navigate the complex challenges they face. It is essential that the support provided is not just top-down, but fosters partnerships with African LGBTQI+ activists, ensuring that they are the ones leading the charge for change in their communities. One example of how international solidarity can work in practice is the support of LGBTQI+ refugees fleeing persecution in their home countries. Many African LGBTQI+ individuals face the painful choice of seeking asylum in more progressive nations to escape violence and discrimination. International organizations can play a crucial role in providing safe pathways for LGBTQI+ refugees, ensuring that they receive the protection they need and can rebuild their lives in a safe and inclusive environment. International pressure can also take the form of diplomatic engagement with African governments to ensure that they comply with international human rights standards. International leaders should use their diplomatic platforms to encourage African nations to respect the rights of LGBTQI+ individuals and push for legal reforms that protect them from violence and discrimination. As we have seen in previous global human rights movements, sustained international pressure can be a catalyst for political and social change. A call for comprehensive LGBTQI+ protection, moving beyond legislation. While legal reform is an essential part of advancing LGBTQI+ rights in Africa, it cannot be the sole solution. Laws that protect LGBTQI+ individuals from discrimination and violence are necessary, but they are not enough on their own. In many African countries, even where laws exist to protect LGBTQI+ rights, widespread discrimination continues due to societal norms, deeply entrenched prejudices, and the lack of public education about LGBTQI+ issues. To address these challenges, there must be a comprehensive approach that goes beyond legal frameworks. This approach should include public education campaigns, cultural exchanges, and media initiatives that promote acceptance, understanding, and the celebration of diversity. South Africa's media has played a significant role in shaping attitudes toward LGBTQI+ individuals, particularly through popular television shows, documentaries, and films that showcase LGBTQI+ stories and struggles. Efforts to reduce homophobia and transphobia in Africa must focus on changing hearts and minds, not just policies. The global LGBTQI+ rights movement has long understood that true change requires both legal protection and social acceptance. Education and awareness campaigns are vital in shifting public perceptions, encouraging communities to see LGBTQI+ people as equals deserving of dignity, respect, and safety. As we continue to mourn the tragic loss of Muhsin Hendricks, it is imperative that we recognize the need for continued global solidarity, local activism, and comprehensive reforms to protect LGBTQI+ individuals. Hendricks's death should serve as a catalyst for change, pushing governments, organizations, and individuals to do more to ensure that LGBTQI+ people across Africa can live freely, openly, and without fear of violence or persecution. His legacy will endure not only through the calls for justice in his name, but also through the ongoing work of activists and allies who continue the fight for equality, dignity, and human rights for all. Strengthening advocacy through education and empowerment. One of the most impactful ways to drive lasting change for LGBTQI+ individuals across Africa is through education and empowerment. As we have seen in South Africa, where legal frameworks may exist, they are often undermined by societal attitudes that still view LGBTQI+ identities as illegitimate or immoral. Changing these entrenched attitudes requires not only legislative change, but also widespread education to promote tolerance, inclusion, and acceptance at all levels of society. In many African communities, LGBTQI+ issues are not discussed openly, and misinformation or ignorance surrounding sexual orientation and gender identity often fuels stigma and discrimination. Public education campaigns that engage both local communities and government institutions can play a significant role in dismantling these prejudices. Schools, universities, and workplaces should become environments that foster inclusivity and diversity. However, it is crucial that these educational initiatives are approached with cultural sensitivity, respecting local traditions and beliefs while also advocating for the protection of fundamental human rights. Religious institutions, which play a prominent role in shaping societal values across Africa, must also be included in this process of change. While many religious groups continue to reject LGBTQI+ identities, there is room for dialogue and understanding. Religious leaders who are willing to engage in inclusive conversations about sexuality and faith can help influence their congregations and open the door for greater acceptance. Training and awareness programs for religious leaders, encouraging them to speak out against violence and discrimination while promoting compassion and empathy, are essential steps in this direction. Importantly, African LGBTQI+ activists are already taking on the challenge of education and empowerment in their local contexts. Many activists use social media platforms to share personal stories, create educational content, and engage in conversations with the broader public about LGBTQI+ issues. Through these efforts, LGBTQI+ activists are not only advocating for their rights, but also giving voice to the silenced members of their communities. Their work in transforming public perception is vital in changing the narrative around LGBTQI plus people and challenging harmful stereotypes that perpetuate violence. Empowering the next generation of LGBTQI plus advocates. Another key element of advancing LGBTQI plus rights in Africa is the empowerment of the next generation of LGBTQI plus advocates. Young people represent a powerful force for change. They are more likely to challenge outdated beliefs, embrace diversity, and engage in movements that seek justice and equality for all. By equipping young LGBTQI+ individuals with the tools and knowledge to become leaders in their communities, we can create a new generation that is not only unafraid to live openly, but also ready to continue the work of advocacy. Educational programs, youth leadership initiatives, and mentorship opportunities can help young people develop the confidence and skills needed to stand up for their rights and the rights of others. It is important to create platforms where young LGBTQI+ individuals can come together, share their experiences, and learn from the successes and struggles of their predecessors. Providing a sense of community and belonging for young LGBTQI+ individuals can help reduce feelings of isolation and foster a sense of empowerment. Additionally, youth-focused advocacy groups should be supported with resources and training to address the unique challenges faced by LGBTQI+ youth, such as bullying, discrimination, and exclusion. These organizations can help create safer environments in schools and communities, ensuring that young LGBTQI+ individuals can thrive without fear of violence or harassment. The role of media in changing perceptions. The media has the power to shape public perceptions, and it plays a critical role in advancing LGBTQI+ rights. Positive portrayals of LGBTQI+ individuals in the media can challenge stereotypes, humanize marginalized communities, and inspire change. South Africa's media landscape has become an important space for LGBTQI+ representation. Television shows, films, documentaries, and news outlets that highlight LGBTQI+ stories not only provide visibility, but also challenge negative portrayals that perpetuate violence and discrimination. In many African countries, LGBTQI+ issues remain underrepresented in mainstream media, and when they are addressed, it is often in a negative or sensationalized manner. Changing this narrative requires active engagement with media producers, journalists, and influencers to promote fair, accurate, and respectful coverage of LGBTQI+ issues. Journalists and media outlets should be encouraged to engage in responsible reporting that avoids harmful stereotypes and portrays LGBTQI+ individuals in a nuanced and positive light. Media campaigns that promote LGBTQI+ inclusion, as well as coverage of the successes and challenges of LGBTQI+ activists, can help shift public attitudes. By highlighting the resilience and strength of LGBTQI+ individuals and the importance of their rights, media outlets can create a cultural environment that is more accepting and understanding of diversity. The use of social media platforms has already proven to be a game changer in the fight for LGBTQI+ rights. Social media has become a vital tool for activism, allowing LGBTQI+ individuals and allies to organize, share information, and rally support for change. Platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube provide space for marginalized voices to be heard and for global conversations about LGBTQI+ rights to take place. However, social media also comes with its challenges, particularly in countries where online censorship, trolling, and cyberbullying are common. Therefore, online safety and advocacy for digital rights must be a priority in this space. The power of legal protection, ensuring justice for LGBTQI+ victims of violence. While societal attitudes and cultural norms are crucial in shaping the experiences of LGBTQI+ individuals, legal protections remain the cornerstone of any human rights movement. It is not enough to simply decriminalize homosexuality or create anti-discrimination laws on paper. These laws must be actively enforced, and there must be meaningful consequences for those who violate the rights of LGBTQI+ individuals. In the wake of Hendricks' murder, the call for stronger legal protections for LGBTQI+ people in Africa has never been more urgent. Hate crimes, such as the killing of Hendricks, should not go unpunished, and law enforcement agencies must take immediate and effective action to investigate and prosecute perpetrators. Governments must ensure that LGBTQI+ individuals are provided with equal protection under the law, and that their safety is guaranteed. This means addressing systemic issues within law enforcement agencies, such as bias, corruption, and lack of training in handling LGBTQI+ cases, and ensuring that victims of violence and discrimination have access to justice. The creation of specialized support systems for LGBTQI+ victims of violence, such as helplines, shelters, and legal aid, is essential in providing safety and ensuring that victims are not re-traumatized by the justice process. Legal frameworks must include mechanisms for reporting hate crimes anonymously and protecting the identities of victims, who often face additional risks when coming forward. International human rights organizations, alongside local activists and legal experts, must continue advocating for comprehensive LGBTQI+ protections. While the decriminalization of homosexuality is an important first step, it is equally important to enact laws that protect LGBTQI+ people from discrimination in areas such as employment, housing, healthcare, and education. These protections must extend beyond the legal system to ensure that LGBTQI+ individuals can live freely and fully participate in society without fear of discrimination or harm. A broader vision for LGBTQI+ equality across Africa. As the fight for LGBTQI+ rights moves forward, it is essential to recognize that this struggle is not only about legal recognition, but also about building a society that values equality, dignity, and respect for all people, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. This requires a multifaceted approach that includes legal reform, social education, cultural change, media representation, and the active support of local and international organizations. The murder of Muhsin Hendricks is a tragic reminder of the risks LGBTQI+ individuals face when they challenge societal norms and advocate for inclusion. However, his life also serves as a beacon of hope for those who continue to fight for LGBTQI+ equality. Hendricks' legacy, one of courage, authenticity, and resistance, will continue to inspire future generations to push for a world where LGBTQI+ individuals are free from violence, discrimination, and persecution. As we reflect on Hendricks' death and the broader struggle for LGBTQI+ rights, it is important to recognize that change will not come overnight. The road ahead may be long and challenging, but the perseverance of activists, allies, and communities will drive the movement toward a future where LGBTQI+ individuals can live openly, proudly, and without fear. The work is far from finished, but each step forward brings us closer to a world that is more just, inclusive, and compassionate for all. The role of intersectionality in the fight for LGBTQI+ rights. As we continue to reflect on the challenges faced by LGBTQI+ individuals across Africa, it is crucial to understand the role of intersectionality in this struggle. Intersectionality, a term coined by Kimberlé Crenshaw, refers to the interconnectedness of social identities such as race, gender, class, religion, and sexual orientation. LGBTQI+ individuals are not just fighting for their rights as sexual minorities. They are also grappling with the impact of other identities, including their race, class, and religious affiliation. For example, an LGBTQI+ Muslim person like Muhsin Hendricks faces not only the challenges of being marginalized for their sexuality, but also the added difficulty of reconciling their faith with their sexual identity. For Hendricks, his activism as both a gay man and a Muslim imam demonstrated the intersectionality of his struggle. challenging both religious intolerance and societal homophobia. He showed that LGBTQI+ identities are diverse and multifaceted, and that the struggles of LGBTQI+ people cannot be viewed in isolation from other aspects of their identities. This intersectional approach is critical for understanding the complexities of LGBTQI+ struggles across Africa, where individuals face the combined burdens of homophobia, racism, religious conservatism, and economic inequality. While the fight for LGBTQI+ rights may appear to be primarily about sexual orientation or gender identity, it is also about tackling broader systems of oppression that affect individuals in multiple ways. LGBTQI+ advocates must work alongside other social justice movements that address issues such as poverty, racism, and gender inequality, ensuring that the fight for LGBTQI+ rights is inclusive and holistic. The concept of intersectionality is particularly important in African countries, where economic disparity, racial identity, and religious conservatism often intersect in ways that compound the challenges faced by marginalized communities. LGBTQI+ people who belong to low-income groups, ethnic minorities, or marginalized religious communities may face even greater barriers to acceptance and protection. Thus, the fight for LGBTQI+ rights cannot be separated from the broader struggle for social, economic, and political justice. Advocates who work on LGBTQI+ issues must be aware of the complex and interwoven factors that influence people's experiences, and solutions to these challenges must be designed with intersectionality in mind. Support systems that address multiple forms of discrimination, such as homelessness, economic instability, or the denial of health care, are essential for creating a more just society where LGBTQI+ individuals can thrive. The role of corporations and the private sector in supporting LGBTQI+ rights. While much of the responsibility for advancing LGBTQI+ rights falls on governments and civil society, the private sector also has an important role to play in creating inclusive and supportive environments for LGBTQI+ people. Corporations and businesses, both local and international, can have a significant impact on LGBTQI+ equality by fostering workplaces that are inclusive and by using their influence to promote positive social change. Companies with strong diversity and inclusion policies can create workplaces where LGBTQI+ employees are valued and respected. Many multinational companies, particularly those operating in Africa, have taken steps to implement anti-discrimination policies, provide support for LGBTQI+ employees, and offer benefits such as healthcare and family leave to same-sex couples. These actions demonstrate that businesses can play a vital role in advancing LGBTQI+ rights, even in countries where legal protections may be lacking. In addition to creating inclusive work environments, corporations have the power to influence public attitudes through advertising, media campaigns, and corporate social responsibility programs. By supporting LGBTQI+ rights publicly and encouraging other businesses to follow suit, companies can help normalize LGBTQI+ acceptance in society. Corporate sponsorship of LGBTQI+ events, such as pride parades or conferences, can further elevate the visibility of LGBTQI+ issues and demonstrate a commitment to diversity and human rights. While corporate support for LGBTQI+ rights can have a positive impact, it is essential that companies do not engage in rainbow washing or superficial displays of support for LGBTQI+ causes without making meaningful changes internally or externally. True corporate advocacy requires more than just marketing campaigns. It involves a commitment to creating lasting change within the organization and contributing to the broader struggle for LGBTQI+ equality. In countries where LGBTQI+ rights are particularly under threat, international companies that have a global presence can use their influence to push for policy changes in both their home countries and in the regions where they operate. By lobbying governments to adopt progressive policies and by ensuring that their own practices align with human rights principles, businesses can play a key role in advancing the cause of LGBTQI+ equality. strengthening global alliances for a unified LGBTQI rights movement. The global LGBTQI movement is stronger than ever, but it requires continued strengthening of alliances across borders. The murder of Muhsin Hendricks and similar acts of violence against LGBTQI individuals around the world highlight the urgent need for solidarity, both at the regional and international levels. Global coalitions of human rights organizations, activists, and allies are critical in advancing the fight for LGBTQI equality. International alliances allow activists to share strategies, raise awareness, and mobilize resources to support local LGBTQI movements. For example, the efforts of organizations such as ILGA, Outright Action International, and Amnesty International have been instrumental in pressuring governments to decriminalize homosexuality and protect LGBTQI individuals from violence. These organizations also provide critical resources, such as legal aid, safety protocols, and mental health support to LGBTQI activists who face heightened risks in their communities. Additionally, global alliances help bring attention to the struggles faced by LGBTQI individuals in regions where their rights are under attack. By working together, international and local organizations can bring about greater public awareness of the issues affecting LGBTQI communities, galvanizing both governmental and societal support for change. When international organizations spotlight incidents like Hendricks' murder, it not only highlights the severity of the issue, but also shows the world that the LGBTQI movement is united and unyielding in its demand for justice. One key aspect of building stronger global alliances is focusing on the importance of regional cooperation. African LGBTQI activists, for instance, can benefit from collaborating with peers in other parts of the world where progress has been made in securing LGBTQI rights. By sharing resources, lessons, and advocacy tactics, activists can enhance their capacity to push for change in their own countries. Similarly, African LGBTQI activists can contribute valuable insights to the global movement by offering a unique perspective on the challenges and opportunities for advancing LGBTQI rights on the continent. Additionally, supporting countries and regions that are making progress toward LGBTQI equality is essential. A global coalition should ensure that countries such as South Africa, which have made strides in LGBTQI legal protections, continue to serve as leaders in the fight for human rights on the continent. At the same time, international solidarity should work to amplify the voices of marginalized LGBTQI communities who face the greatest risk of violence and persecution, advocating for a more inclusive future. The death of Muhsin Hendricks has underscored the many hurdles still facing LGBTQI individuals, especially in regions where they are often subjected to violence, discrimination, and exclusion. However, it has also reinforced the importance of resilience, activism, and solidarity in the pursuit of equality. The global movement for LGBTQI rights continues to make strides, but there is still much work to be done. To build a future where LGBTQI people can live without fear of persecution or violence, the international community must redouble its efforts. Governments, civil society, religious institutions, and the private sector must all work together to create a world that values diversity and upholds the human rights of every individual, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. The path forward may be challenging, but with continued advocacy, education, and solidarity, we can move closer to a society where LGBTQI people can live authentically and without fear. The legacy of Muhsin Hendricks will continue to inspire future generations of activists, not only in South Africa and Africa, but around the world. His life is a testament to the transformative power of courage, compassion, and the pursuit of justice. As the global LGBTQI rights movement presses on, the memory of those like Hendricks, who faced unimaginable adversity and still chose to live and fight openly, will continue to fuel the struggle for a more inclusive, just, and loving world. Strengthening community support networks for LGBTQI+ individuals. In addition to legal reforms, educational campaigns, and international pressure, a key element in advancing the cause of LGBTQI+ rights is the creation of robust community support networks. These networks offer essential emotional, psychological, and social support for LGBTQI+ individuals who may face rejection from their families, religious communities, or society at large. Building and strengthening these community resources is particularly crucial for marginalized LGBTQI+ people, such as those living in poverty or rural areas, who may have limited access to social services and legal protections. In many African countries, LGBTQI+ individuals often find themselves isolated, cut off from the support systems that can provide them with safety and resources. The fear of violence, imprisonment, or family rejection often forces LGBTQI+ individuals into hiding, contributing to feelings of loneliness and despair. This isolation can have severe mental health consequences, including depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. Community support networks can help alleviate this sense of isolation by providing safe spaces where LGBTQI+ individuals can come together, share their experiences, and receive emotional support. These networks can offer counseling, healthcare services, legal assistance, and resources that help individuals navigate the challenges they face. Additionally, peer support groups allow individuals to connect with others who understand their struggles, fostering a sense of belonging and solidarity. LGBTQI+ advocacy organizations, local community groups, and mental health professionals must work together to build these supportive environments. They can organize outreach programs to inform LGBTQI+ individuals about available services and ensure that support is accessible to all, especially those living in more rural or remote areas where services are often limited. One crucial component of these networks is access to mental health resources. LGBTQI+ individuals often experience high levels of discrimination and violence, which can take a toll on their psychological well-being. Providing access to mental health services that are both culturally competent and sensitive to the unique experiences of LGBTQI+ individuals is essential. Community-based counseling services, support groups, and helplines can help individuals process trauma, build resilience, and improve their mental health. Creating safe spaces and community networks that offer protection and support is vital in reducing the vulnerability of LGBTQI+ individuals to violence and abuse. These networks can also serve as a form of resistance against the societal norms that exclude and marginalize LGBTQI+ people. By demonstrating that LGBTQI+ individuals have the right to exist and thrive, these networks not only provide direct support, but also challenge the stigmatizing narratives that contribute to societal discrimination. The need for political will, ensuring accountability, while advocacy from international organizations, grassroots movements, and the LGBTQI+ community itself is crucial, the political will of African governments is perhaps the most significant factor in ensuring real progress for LGBTQI+ rights. Governments must acknowledge that LGBTQI+ individuals are entitled to the same rights and protections as any other citizen, and that their lives are not less valuable because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. To make meaningful progress, governments must take responsibility for holding perpetrators of hate crimes accountable. The murder of Muhsin Hendricks highlights the critical need for law enforcement agencies to take violence against LGBTQI+ individuals seriously. Law enforcement must be properly trained to handle cases involving LGBTQI+ individuals, ensuring that these cases are not dismissed or mishandled due to prejudice or ignorance. Governments should also provide adequate funding and resources to LGBTQI+ organizations that offer legal, health, and psychological support. This support can be instrumental in ensuring that LGBTQI+ individuals have access to the services they need, even in the face of widespread discrimination. Additionally, creating legal frameworks that protect LGBTQI+ individuals from discrimination in areas such as employment, housing, education, and healthcare is critical in ensuring their dignity and security. However, beyond legal protection, governments must also work to shift public opinion and social norms to ensure that LGBTQI individuals can live freely without fear of harassment or violence. This requires leadership from the highest levels of government. Heads of state and political leaders must use their platforms to publicly support LGBTQI rights, denounce hate crimes, and encourage their citizens to accept and respect diversity. Political leaders must also take steps to dismantle the social and cultural norms that sustain prejudice against LGBTQI individuals, whether these norms are rooted in religion, tradition, or outdated ideologies. The role of education in shaping future generations. Education is another fundamental pillar in the fight for LGBTQI rights, as it is instrumental in shaping societal attitudes towards sexual orientation and gender identity. Schools, universities, and other educational institutions are critical sites for both raising awareness about LGBTQI issues and fostering acceptance and inclusivity. Providing LGBTQI inclusive education can go a long way in dismantling homophobia and transphobia, particularly among young people who are often more open to change. LGBTQI inclusive education should not just focus on teaching young people about sexual orientation and gender identity. It must also address the harmful stereotypes and prejudices that contribute to discrimination. By teaching students about the history, struggles, and contributions of LGBTQI people, schools can help foster empathy and understanding, creating a more inclusive and supportive environment. Schools can also serve as spaces where young LGBTQI individuals can feel safe and valued, ensuring they are not subjected to bullying or harassment because of their identity. However, the introduction of LGBTQI inclusive education can be met with resistance, particularly in conservative societies. Religious groups, parents, and even educators may argue that such education contradicts their cultural or moral values. As such, LGBTQI inclusive education must be implemented gradually and with careful consideration of local contexts. It should also include conversations about religious tolerance, cultural respect, and the human rights of all individuals, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. For LGBTQI individuals in Africa, education can provide a crucial means of self-empowerment and self-acceptance. It can also equip future generations of advocates with the tools and knowledge necessary to continue fighting for their rights. While many LGBTQI activists today are working against the grain, tomorrow's activists can take the baton forward in a world that, hopefully, will be more inclusive and just. Building a global network of LGBTQI support. The continued struggle for LGBTQI rights in Africa underscores the importance of building a global network of support. The work of international advocacy organizations, governments, and human rights groups in supporting African LGBTQI activists is crucial to ensuring that they are not isolated in their efforts. The international community must continue to provide support in the form of funding, advocacy, and resources, allowing local movements to thrive and making the global LGBTQI rights movement stronger. A global network can also help amplify the voices of those who are often silenced or overlooked. By elevating the stories of LGBTQI individuals in Africa, the international community can raise awareness of the specific challenges they face and advocate for more effective responses. This network can also help connect LGBTQI activists across borders, creating a sense of solidarity that transcends national boundaries. Through collective action, the global LGBTQI movement can foster meaningful change for individuals and communities around the world. By supporting local activists and campaigns, pushing for legal reforms, and encouraging cultural change, the international community can help create a more equitable world where LGBTQI individuals are free to live authentically and without fear. Looking forward toward a future of inclusion and equality, The tragic death of Muhsin Hendricks marks a significant moment in the ongoing struggle for LGBTQI+ rights in Africa and around the world. It highlights the deep-seated prejudices and violence faced by LGBTQI+ individuals, particularly those who challenge societal norms. However, Hendricks's legacy, his commitment to both his faith and his identity as a gay man, serves as an inspiration for all those who continue to fight for LGBTQI+ equality. The path ahead is long and fraught with challenges, but it is also filled with opportunities for change. By continuing to build strong support networks, advocating for legal reforms, promoting education and awareness, and strengthening global alliances, we can work toward a future where LGBTQI+ individuals are not only tolerated, but embraced for who they are. This struggle is not just for the rights of LGBTQI+ individuals, but for the broader goal of creating a society based on equality, dignity, and respect for all people, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. As we continue the fight for LGBTQI+ rights, we honor the memory of Muhsin Hendricks and all those who have given their lives for this cause. Their bravery, resilience, and unwavering commitment to justice will continue to guide the way toward a better, more inclusive future. The importance of government accountability and human rights enforcement. As the struggle for LGBTQI+ rights progresses across Africa and beyond, the necessity for government accountability in protecting LGBTQI+ individuals cannot be overstated. While many African governments have made strides in terms of legal reform, the continued violence and discrimination faced by LGBTQI+ individuals, as exemplified by the murder of Muhsin Hendricks, reveals a troubling gap between laws and enforcement. Governments must prioritize the effective implementation of laws that protect LGBTQI+ people from violence, discrimination, and exclusion. Without concrete actions, legal frameworks remain empty gestures that fail to protect vulnerable communities. This includes ensuring that police forces are properly trained to handle cases of violence or discrimination against LGBTQI+ individuals with sensitivity, respect, and professionalism. Far too often, LGBTQI+ victims of violence find themselves re-victimized by law enforcement agencies that are either indifferent to their plight or actively hostile toward them. To combat this, there needs to be an emphasis on building trust between the LGBTQI+ community and law enforcement. This could involve training police officers on LGBTQI+ issues, creating anonymous reporting systems, and establishing special units within law enforcement agencies dedicated to handling hate crimes. The international community, as well as local human rights organizations, can assist governments in establishing these structures and ensuring accountability. Moreover, the judiciary must also play a critical role in upholding the rights of LGBTQI+ individuals. Courts should interpret and apply laws that protect LGBTQI+ people with the understanding that all forms of discrimination are harmful and should be eradicated. The judiciary must be independent, impartial, and fully committed to human rights, ensuring that perpetrators of violence are held accountable and that LGBTQI+ individuals can seek justice without fear of prejudice. In addition to enforcing laws, governments must also recognize the need for broader societal change. Legal protections are essential, but they cannot create lasting change on their own. Governments should actively promote inclusion and tolerance through public policies, media campaigns, and education programs. This can help to shift the cultural and social attitudes that perpetuate discrimination against LGBTQI+ people, ensuring that LGBTQI+ individuals are accepted, not just legally protected. Bridging the gap between religious beliefs and LGBTQI+ rights. The tension between religious beliefs and LGBTQI+ rights remains one of the most significant challenges facing LGBTQI+ individuals in Africa. Religion plays a powerful role in shaping societal attitudes, and for many, it is a source of comfort and identity. However, for LGBTQI+ individuals, religion can also be a source of rejection, as many religious teachings view same-sex relationships and gender nonconformity as sinful or immoral. The role of religious leaders in this debate cannot be ignored. While some religious leaders have used their platforms to condemn LGBTQI+ individuals, others are beginning to challenge these interpretations and call for acceptance and love. This shift is critical in ensuring that LGBTQI+ individuals who are religious can reconcile their faith with their sexual orientation or gender identity. One example of this shift is the work of LGBTQI+ Muslim activists, such as Muhsin Hendricks, who worked to create spaces where queer Muslims could practice their faith without fear of rejection or persecution. His example shows that it is possible to reconcile faith with LGBTQI+ identity, and that religious leaders have a responsibility to promote inclusion and respect. Hendricks' mosque, Gqeberha, and his work with the Inner Circle were important steps in creating such spaces, and his legacy can continue to inspire future efforts in this area. Religious institutions must be engaged in the dialogue about LGBTQI+ rights, particularly in Africa, where religion often holds significant social and political influence. Interfaith dialogues that involve LGBTQI+ individuals and religious leaders can help to bridge the gap between faith and sexual identity, fostering mutual understanding and respect. These conversations are not easy, but they are necessary to create a world where LGBTQI+ individuals can live freely without feeling the need to choose between their faith and their identity. Moreover, religious organizations can play an important role in advocating social justice and human rights. By embracing inclusivity, religious leaders can help to dispel the myths and stereotypes that have long been associated with LGBTQI+ individuals and contribute to building a society based on dignity, respect, and equality. Empowering LGBTQI+ youth and future leaders. The next generation of LGBTQI+ leaders will be essential in continuing the fight for equality and justice. As young people increasingly become engaged in social justice movements, it is crucial that LGBTQI+ youth are given the tools, resources, and support they need to become advocates for change. Empowering LGBTQI+ youth ensures that the movement for equality remains vibrant, dynamic, and inclusive. Youth organizations and mentorship programs are essential in helping LGBTQI+ youth navigate the challenges they face. These programs can provide safe spaces for young people to explore their identities, share their experiences, and receive guidance from more experienced advocates. Moreover, such programs can help LGBTQI+ youth develop leadership skills, which will be critical as they grow into the next generation of activists and leaders. LGBTQI+ youth, especially those living in countries where homosexuality is criminalized or stigmatized, often face tremendous adversity. They may experience bullying, rejection, or violence at school, at home, or in their communities. Providing resources that protect these young people from harm, such as safe houses, legal support, and mental health services, is essential in ensuring their safety and well-being. Additionally, LGBTQI+ youth should be encouraged to engage in leadership roles within their communities, organizations, and activism. Empowering young people to lead not only helps them develop their skills and confidence, but also ensures that LGBTQI+ advocacy remains relevant and responsive to the needs of future generations. Through mentorship, education, and support, the LGBTQI+ movement can equip young people to carry the torch for equality and justice, ensuring that the fight for LGBTQI+ rights continues long after the current generation of activists has passed the baton. Global solidarity and the path to a just future. The global community has a vital role to play in ensuring that the rights of LGBTQI+ individuals are recognized and respected. As we have seen through the murder of Muhsin Hendricks, international solidarity and pressure are essential in bringing attention to the challenges faced by LGBTQI+ individuals, particularly in regions where their rights are most under threat. The global response to Hendricks's death demonstrates the power of unity and collective action in advocating for justice and human rights. International organizations, governments, and activists must continue to work together to create a world where LGBTQI+ individuals are not persecuted, discriminated against, or marginalized. This requires continued advocacy for legal reforms, better enforcement of anti-discrimination laws, and the creation of safe spaces for LGBTQI+ individuals to live freely. Governments must also recognize the value of LGBTQI+ individuals to society, providing the support they need to thrive in all aspects of life. The movement for LGBTQI+ rights is not just about fighting for legal recognition. It is about creating a world where all individuals, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, can live their lives fully and without fear. This is a world where dignity, respect, and equality are not optional, but fundamental rights for every person. While the path to this future may be difficult, the momentum created by activists, allies, and organizations worldwide is undeniable. The work of individuals like Muhsin Hendricks continues to inspire and empower the next generation of LGBTQI+ advocates, ensuring that their struggles and triumphs are not forgotten. Through ongoing advocacy, education, and solidarity, we can build a more inclusive and just world where everyone, regardless of who they love or how they identify, can live authentically and without fear. The role of digital platforms in advancing LGBTQI+ rights. As technology continues to evolve, digital platforms have become an increasingly powerful tool for advancing LGBTQI+ rights. Social media, online campaigns, and digital media outlets provide LGBTQI+ activists and advocates with unprecedented opportunities to reach global audiences, raise awareness, and mobilize support for their causes. Digital platforms also offer LGBTQI+ individuals a sense of community and belonging, especially in countries where open discussions about sexual orientation and gender identity are limited or stigmatized. In Africa, where access to public spaces may be restricted and societal hostility toward LGBTQI+ individuals remains high, the internet offers a space where LGBTQI+ people can share their stories, connect with others, and advocate for their rights without fear of physical harm. These digital spaces have the potential to challenge traditional narratives and empower marginalized voices, while also drawing attention to issues that would otherwise remain hidden. However, while digital platforms have provided opportunities for advocacy and connection, they also pose risks. Online harassment, cyberbullying, doxing, and surveillance are common threats that LGBTQI+ individuals face in many parts of Africa. Many governments are increasingly using technology to monitor and censor the online activities of LGBTQI+ advocates, further restricting free speech and silencing dissent. LGBTQI+ activists may face digital attacks that undermine their efforts or put them in danger. Therefore, while digital space is a powerful tool for change, it also requires careful management and protection. Activists must take precautions to safeguard their privacy and security, while governments and tech companies must ensure that digital platforms are safe, inclusive, and not complicit in silencing LGBTQI+ voices. This may involve pushing for stronger regulations around online harassment and ensuring that platforms actively combat hate speech and cyberbullying. One of the key roles that international organizations, tech companies, and LGBTQI+ advocacy groups can play is ensuring the protection of online spaces where LGBTQI+ individuals can freely express themselves. Advocacy for online safety should be a priority, and tech companies must work to implement policies that prioritize the protection of LGBTQI+ users from hate speech and harassment. Likewise, governments should take responsibility for preventing the use of digital tools to intimidate and silence LGBTQI+ activists and organizations. In the face of online censorship or harassment, LGBTQI+ activists can turn to digital strategies that protect their anonymity and amplify their messages. They can create encrypted platforms, use pseudonyms, and engage in secure communications to maintain their safety. This digital empowerment is a vital aspect of the LGBTQI+ rights movement, enabling advocates to keep pushing forward in the face of adversity. Building transnational coalitions for global LGBTQI+ justice. Another essential element in advancing LGBTQI+ rights is the building of transnational coalitions that work together to combat shared challenges. The struggle for LGBTQI+ equality is not confined to one region or country. It is a global issue that transcends national borders. Countries around the world share similar struggles with homophobia, transphobia, and violence against LGBTQI+ individuals. As such, it is critical that LGBTQI+ activists, human rights organizations, and policymakers build global networks that can work in solidarity to tackle these challenges. The international LGBTQI+ movement, which has gained significant momentum in recent decades, is built on the idea that human rights are universal. There is a need for global collaboration to address issues that affect LGBTQI+ people worldwide, whether they involve violence, legal challenges, or discrimination. Transnational coalitions are essential for providing resources, sharing knowledge, and building collective strategies to tackle these challenges. These coalitions can also serve as a platform for African LGBTQI+ activists to raise awareness about the unique struggles they face, from legal discrimination to cultural and religious opposition. While global LGBTQI+ rights organizations play a vital role in supporting African activists, it is equally important that the voices of African LGBTQI+ individuals and organizations be at the forefront of this global conversation. Their experiences and perspectives should shape the direction of international advocacy and policy. One example of a successful transnational coalition is the work of the Global LGBTI Human Rights Coalition, which unites advocates and activists from different parts of the world to create a common front against human rights violations based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Similarly, the African LGBTI+ Coalition has sought to bring together African activists and allies to advocate for LGBTQI+ rights on the continent. By forming alliances that span across borders, these coalitions can not only advocate for LGBTQI+ individuals, but can also work on issues that intersect with LGBTQI+ rights, such as gender equality, racial justice, and poverty reduction. These efforts can help create a more inclusive and comprehensive approach to human rights that considers the diverse identities and struggles of LGBTQI+ people across the globe. Bridging the gap between activism and policy change. While activism is crucial in raising awareness and advocating for change, it must be complemented by meaningful policy reform that provides tangible protection for LGBTQI+ individuals. In many African countries, LGBTQI+ rights are not legally protected, and the fear of prosecution or violence prevents LGBTQI+ people from asserting their rights. In countries where homosexuality is criminalized, the legal system often treats LGBTQI+ individuals as second-class citizens, leaving them vulnerable to abuse. Advocacy organizations must therefore work closely with governments to ensure that LGBTQI+ rights are embedded in national legal frameworks. This can involve lobbying for the decriminalization of homosexuality, pushing for anti-discrimination laws, and advocating for the inclusion of LGBTQI+ people in the broader human rights framework. Political will is needed from African governments to demonstrate a commitment to ensuring that LGBTQI+ individuals are afforded the same rights and protections as any other citizen. At the same time, advocacy groups must ensure that policy reforms are implemented effectively. It is not enough for laws to exist on paper. They must be actively enforced. Law enforcement agencies, judges, and public officials must be trained to recognize and uphold the rights of LGBTQI+ individuals, ensuring that they are treated with dignity and respect in every aspect of their lives. Policies must be designed not only to protect LGBTQI+ people from violence, but to ensure that they have access to healthcare, education, housing, and employment without facing discrimination. Efforts to create legal protections for LGBTQI+ people must also be accompanied by public awareness campaigns to help shift societal attitudes. Governments and NGOs should work together to promote the message that LGBTQI+ people deserve the same rights and respect as anyone else. This can be done through media campaigns, public speeches, and educational programs that highlight the importance of inclusion and diversity. In addition to legal reforms, governments must ensure that LGBTQI+ people have access to social services, healthcare, and mental health support. Many LGBTQI+ individuals face significant challenges in accessing basic services due to discrimination or fear of being outed. Governments must provide safe and inclusive spaces for LGBTQI+ individuals to seek support and care, ensuring that these services are both accessible and non-judgmental. Towards a future of unity and equality. As we continue to reflect on the legacy of Muhsin Hendricks and the broader movement for LGBTQI+ rights, we are reminded of the importance of solidarity, justice, and perseverance. Hendricks' life, dedicated to advocating for the rights of LGBTQI+ Muslims and marginalized individuals, serves as a beacon for the work that still needs to be done. His legacy is not only one of activism, but also of hope that, through collective action and unwavering commitment, a future of equality and inclusion is possible. The fight for LGBTQI+ rights in Africa and around the world will not be easy, but it is essential. It is a fight for human dignity, freedom, and the recognition of every individual's right to love and live authentically. The global LGBTQI+ movement, with its diverse voices and shared vision, continues to build momentum toward a world where no one, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, is left behind. Through continued advocacy, legal reforms, education, and the building of cross-border alliances, we can ensure that the rights of LGBTQI+ people are recognized, respected, and protected. As the movement moves forward, we must continue to honor the memories of those like Muhsin Hendricks, whose work and courage continue to shape the path toward a more just, inclusive, and loving world. The journey is far from over, but the commitment to creating a better world for LGBTQI+ individuals remains steadfast, and it will continue until every LGBTQI+ person can live their truth without fear. Strengthening regional and continental efforts for LGBTQI+ rights. As we progress in the fight for LGBTQI+ rights across Africa, it is crucial that we not only look at individual countries, but also consider the broader regional and continental efforts. The challenges faced by LGBTQI+ individuals in Africa are shared across many nations, making it imperative for African leaders to collaborate and foster a unified approach to combating homophobia, transphobia, and discrimination. The African Union, AU, and regional bodies such as the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and the Southern African Development Community, SADC, have a critical role to play in advancing LGBTQI+ rights across the continent. While the AU has yet to take a strong stance on LGBTQI+ issues, there is significant potential for these bodies to influence policy and encourage member states to adopt more inclusive frameworks. Regional solidarity could lead to collective action against human rights violations, putting pressure on governments that perpetuate discriminatory practices. African leaders must recognize that promoting LGBTQI+ rights is not about conforming to external pressures or international norms. Rather, it is about fostering a culture of respect, dignity, and equality for all citizens. This approach aligns with the African Union's goals of unity, peace, and prosperity, as it is through inclusivity and human rights protections that African nations can grow stronger, more diverse, and more stable. At the regional level, LGBTQI+ rights activists and allies can engage with international actors to push for stronger human rights protections, while also creating localized solutions that respect African cultures and values. Transnational solidarity is crucial in ensuring that African LGBTQI+ people are not left behind in the global conversation on human rights. Advice to African leaders. To African leaders, I offer the following advice. 1. Commitment to legal reforms. The decriminalization of homosexuality is a necessary first step toward ensuring the protection of LGBTQI+ individuals. Governments must amend discriminatory laws that perpetuate violence and inequality. It is time to stop criminalizing love and recognize the inherent dignity of every citizen, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. 2. Implement and enforce anti-discrimination laws. Legal protections are meaningless without enforcement. Leaders must ensure that existing anti-discrimination laws are implemented effectively and that those who commit hate crimes against LGBTQI+ people are held accountable. A commitment to justice is vital for building a safe and inclusive society. 3. Engage in public dialogue. Leaders should promote open conversations about LGBTQI+ rights, both within their governments and among the public. This includes public education campaigns to dismantle harmful stereotypes and encourage acceptance. By fostering understanding and compassion, governments can help shift social attitudes toward greater inclusiveness. 4. Support LGBTQI+ activists and organizations. Many African countries have vibrant and courageous LGBTQI+ activists fighting for equality and justice. It is crucial that African leaders support these organizations by providing resources, protection, and a platform for their voices. Empowering local activists helps ensure that solutions are contextually relevant and locally led. 5. Stand against violence. Leaders must take a firm stand against violence, discrimination, and hate crimes targeting LGBTQI+ individuals. Silence in the face of such abuses only perpetuates the cycle of harm. African leaders must work together to create societies where everyone, regardless of their identity, can live without fear. 6. Foster inclusivity in religious and cultural contexts. While respecting religious and cultural beliefs, African leaders must encourage dialogue that fosters respect for LGBTQI+ individuals within these communities. Religious tolerance and acceptance should be prioritized, recognizing that people can hold different beliefs without resorting to harm or exclusion. 7. Make LGBTQI+ rights a matter of human rights. Leaders must understand that LGBTQI+ rights are not a foreign imposition, but a matter of basic human rights. The struggle for equality is a struggle for justice, and African nations must align with global human rights standards to ensure the dignity and safety of all people. Summary of key messages. In summary, the murder of Muhsin Hendricks serves as a stark reminder of the need for urgent action to protect LGBTQI+ individuals in Africa. This tragedy highlights the systemic violence and discrimination faced by sexual minorities and the need for African leaders to take a stand. Key messages from this ongoing struggle include legal reform, decriminalizing homosexuality and enacting robust anti-discrimination laws is critical to protecting LGBTQI+ people from violence and marginalization. Accountability and justice. Governments must hold perpetrators of hate crimes accountable and ensure law enforcement agencies are properly trained to handle LGBTQI+ issues with respect and impartiality. Public education and awareness. Shifting societal attitudes through education and public awareness campaigns is essential for fostering a culture of tolerance and respect for LGBTQI+ individuals. Community support. Strengthening LGBTQI+ community support networks and offering safe spaces is crucial to help individuals feel empowered and protected. International solidarity. Global networks of support play an important role in amplifying the voices of local activists and ensuring that LGBTQI+ rights are recognized as a universal human right. Religious and cultural dialogue. Promoting religious and cultural dialogue that fosters inclusion and understanding will help bridge divides between faith and LGBTQI+ identities, reducing resistance to change. To African leaders, the call is clear. Embrace inclusivity, uphold human rights, and ensure that LGBTQI+ individuals can live without fear of persecution. By acting on these critical issues, Africa can lead the way toward a future of equality, dignity, and respect for all its citizens, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. The struggle for LGBTQI plus rights in Africa is far from over, but through legislative reform, public education, community support, and leadership, we can ensure that no LGBTQI plus individual is left behind in the fight for justice. The legacy of individuals like Muhsin Hendricks must inspire us to continue working toward a society where all people, regardless of their sexual orientation, are free to live authentically and without fear. Thank you for tuning in to the Bold African Voice, BAV. If you found this analysis insightful, please like, comment, and share with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Join the conversation on social media with the hashtags Muhsin Hendricks, LGBTQI rights, and the Bold African Voice. Together, we can continue advocating for equality, justice, and human dignity for all. Stay bold, stay informed, and until next time, keep raising your voice.